Roger McNamee is the co-founder of Elevation Partners and the author of Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe. What do you make of this letter that he sent? And particularly this idea, I mean, government is as entitled, provided it's not bullying or threatening, government is as entitled as anybody else to say, we want you to do this.
Yeah, Richard, the whole notion that we are talking about a freedom of speech issue is just complete nonsense. Since 2016, internet platforms have consistently been vectors for disinformation. They have amplified it, and they've done so consistently in a way that has, in fact, globally benefited the extreme right at the expense of all other voices. And in Facebook's case, they have particularly been damaging not just to democracy, but also to public health through the amplification of COVID disinformation, and also public safety by harming young children. And so the notion that Zuckerberg has a leg to stand on here is just completely ridiculous. And I would argue that all he's trying to do in this letter is two things. He's trying to cow the Biden administration, and he's trying to signal Trump that he's really aligned with Trump, because Trump's been threatening him with prison.
Isn't that a bit nakedly obvious, Roger? I mean, to do that, or is it just as nakedly obvious as that?
Well, I think it is as nakedly obvious as that. I think, keep in mind, all of these tech billionaires live in incredible isolation. They live in these gigantic compounds where the only people they see are people who agree with them. And the result of this is you see this herd behavior. And in the United States, in this election cycle, it has favored former President Trump to the exclusion of the Democrats. And yes, there is Reid Hoffman, who has been very visibly supporting Kamala Harris, but he's been doing so by arguing for basically the same policies that the Republicans are arguing for, which is no taxes, no regulation of any kind.
Okay, what do you believe is legitimate pressure that government puts at, say, like a time of crisis? And maybe I should rephrase that in the negative. What do you believe is illegitimate pressure where the force of government would be used?
Well, so Richard, I want to break this into two parts. You know, the first thing is government has a duty to protect public safety. It has a duty to protect democracy and public health. And those are not topics that should be controversial at all. But the second part of the problem is that these companies have operated without any form of government regulation. They've been totally self-regulating. And the consequence of that has been huge damage to democracy, the undermining of the response to COVID, and a lot of extreme harm to young children. And I look at this, and I think the Federal Trade Commission has the right idea. In their case against Instagram, which is part of Meta, they're arguing that there should be no collection of data on minors and no monetization of data on minors. I think that's the correct thing, which is the underlying problem is that these products are architected and the companies have cultures that guarantee bad outcomes, and there's no regulation to prevent that from happening.
I can hear some of your critics saying, well, Roger would say that. I mean, you know, here he is bashing away at Facebook and Meta again, wrote a book called The Catastrophe and Zucked. What would we expect Roger to say?
I think anyone who says that at least is paying attention. The fact that I continue to say it, though, reflects the fact that nothing has been done in terms of congressional or legislative things in Europe to try to rein these guys in. The courts in the United States, thanks to the Justice Department, thanks to the Federal Trade Commission, are beginning to engage. Right. And in Europe, there are good laws that just aren't being enforced.
Well, now, hang on a second. We've had every European commissioner on this program. And the argument seems to be that when it comes to things like antitrust and social media, Europe is basically saying to these companies, if you want to play in our playground, in our territory, you have to follow these rules. The US is doing an enforcement rather than a price of entry method.
Well, and if the Europeans denied entry, then that formula would be working. And I totally applaud the laws that have been passed in Europe. What makes me extremely uncomfortable is that we are doing this after harm has been done and without any mechanism to prevent future harm from happening. So I think the arrest of the founder of Telegram is a really interesting step in France, because it's suggesting, you guys are actually doing businesses that are crime scenes. You should be held accountable for that. And that's something I agree with.
I have to say, Roger, well, first of all, very grateful that you came and talked to us today. As always, it's a treat and a pleasure. And I have to say, that is a splendid painting behind you. Not that it distracted what you were saying.
Great San Francisco artist.
Well, it's a magnificent painting. I'm very glad that you shared that with us. We enjoyed that as well as your views. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us.